South Carolina is one of the few and getting fewer states still carrying out the death penalty. In recent years, the state has faced significant controversy over its death penalty eligible trials and its execution methods. From lethal injection shortages to the return of the firing squad, the state has been the center of national debate on capital punishment. South Carolina also just resumed the death penalty last September after a 13-year hiatus and has executed 4 men since, 3 by lethal injection and 1 by firing squad. There are now 28 men on the state's death row, and another execution has been scheduled to be carried out on April 11th. That is, unless Governor Henry McMaster grants clemency. But no governor has granted clemency in the state since capital punishment was reinstated in 1976. But beyond the politics, what is it like to witness an execution up close? What goes through the mind of someone who has seen a human life end at the hands of the state? Jeffrey Collins, a seasoned reporter for the Associated Press, has witnessed every execution in South Carolina firsthand. He joins us on this extended edition of Connect to the Capitol to share his experiences, how he prepares for such a grim task, and the broader implications of the death penalty in our state and in our nation. Jeffrey, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, as we said, you have witnessed executions firsthand in South Carolina. Can you walk us through what that experience is like? What do you see, hear, feel in that moment?
The first word that pops in my head is it's always a very somber experience. The death chamber is very quiet. There's no talking, there's no chatting. It's a place where, everybody just kind of soaks in what happens. And it's a small room. It's not a very big room at all. I think if the glass with bars weren't there, the people in the front row of the witness chamber could reach out and touch the gurney where a lethal injection takes place. The electric chair and the firing squad chair are probably maybe 15 and 20 feet further back from that. But it's a very small area where all this happens.
My goodness. So as you prepare for this, to go into that space, how do you mentally and emotionally get ready for it? Is there any kind of process that you go through to get ready for that weight?
Since I've seen, this will be my 12th execution. I've seen 9 lethal injections and now a firing squad and an electric chair. So I know what I'm going to see. So that's part of the process, is understanding what you're going to see and knowing what you're going to see. That was helpful. Well, that's why the firing squad had a little extra tension and anxiety in my own mind in dealing with this. And then part of it is you just kind of go into a mode where I'm almost like a recorder. I'm actually watching what happens and I'm writing it down so I can tell that to other people. So there's almost this mode in which that I'm just taking in what I see, and then when I get out to talk to the media, I'm going to send that back out to them.
Right, and then as a reporter, you have this unique, this really weighty responsibility. So what are you looking for as you observe, and how do you decide what to report and what to leave out?
You look for a bit of everything. I mean, there's a clock that's always to the right, and you're checking times, because obviously if a lethal injection inmate was breathing for 3 or 4 minutes, that's a very important detail to let people know. The inmate's in front of you, so you're keeping an eye on that person. You're also watching the witnesses in the room, because each one of them have their own unique story. I mean, there's family members of a victim that are finally seeing this sentence carried out that they've been waiting for decades. There's a lawyer or a family member of the inmate who probably has a very close relationship, and they're watching someone that they care for die. So you're just trying to take everything in and keep everything in your view and in your thoughts and write it down so you can always check your notes later. That's a pretty important thing too.
Absolutely. And I've also read that you're allowed no electronics, just a notebook and a pen, right?
They are very concerned there could be some kind of, it's illegal to videotape the execution or anything, and now in the days of smart pens and even smart glasses. So what they'd make you do is you turn everything in. I turn in my keys, my driver's license, everything. It's left behind. I get 1 pad and 1 pen, and it's my gift from the corrections department, as they like to say, to write down what I see happen.
Yeah, but you keep your glasses still at this point.
Yes, they'll check them out, make sure they're okay. But yeah, they are very strict about that. They don't want any videotaping at all in that space.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, a lot of people have very strong opinions on the death penalty, but there are so few in our nation and our state who've actually witnessed it. Has witnessing executions shaped your views at all? Anything you're willing to share?
It has to. I have to make it irrelevant to it because my role is to tell you what happened. It's not to tell you that this was right, not to tell you that this was wrong. It's just to tell you what I saw, and you get to make up your own mind and your own determination based on in part, what I tell you and your own moral beliefs and everything else.
Is there any execution that's really stood out to you more than maybe even some of the others?
They all stand out in a way. And I think that's important because even though I've seen so many of them, each one of them is a human being, and each one of them needs to have some sort of importance. I wouldn't want to dismiss any of them, but each method is different. The firing squad obviously was very quick. It was very sudden, and it was very violent. You don't have any warning anything's about to happen until that crack of the gunshot, and there's 2 minutes between the time the hood's put on the inmate and you hear that crack. So that's a very tension-filled 2 minutes while you're waiting for things to happen. Lethal injection is a slower process, but it allows for, the inmate isn't hooded. So you see their face and you see their interactions. I saw one inmate had a tear that rolled down his cheek as it started. Another one was interacting with his mom. There's been inmates that check out each member of each witness in the room and lock eyes with each of us. And so, they're all different in their own ways.
Now, the next man scheduled for execution, Mikal Mahdi, he has said that his defense didn't even span the length of a Law and Order episode, and it was just as superficial. Can you tell us more about what happened there?
Yeah, he is on death row for killing an off-duty police officer. The officer was at a shed in Calhoun County that he owned on some land he had. He was an off-duty Orangeburg officer. And so he also pled guilty to killing a convenience store clerk before that in North Carolina. In his last-ditch appeal, he's saying that in his trial, he chose to plead guilty. In South Carolina, that meant the judge determined whether he lives or dies instead of a jury. So it's much shorter than death penalty hearings are when they're before a jury. In this case, prosecutors called nearly 30 witnesses before the judge. Mahdi's defense called 2. And neither of those witnesses were a family member or someone or teacher or anyone that knew him. It was just people that were recounting, essentially presenting a report. And so Mahdi's attorneys say that just is an inadequate defense, that the judge, if he had heard more and a greater amount of Mahdi's defense, might have changed his mind and not said that he had no humanity when he sentenced him to death.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. And it must be so hard to balance those two sides as a judge in particular without even the jury's input. Now, South Carolina's death row population has declined over the years, and some states have moved away from capital punishment altogether. Do you see the death penalty fading away, or do you think it will remain part of our justice system?
It's a yes and a no answer there. I think it's not used as often here. I mean, South Carolina has 28 people on death row right now. If you go back 15 years, it was in the 60s. And in that time, we've only executed now 4 people. So most of those were people that their death penalties were overturned on appeals, and then either they accepted a life sentence or were sentenced to life. There have been some natural deaths. So on that end, it happens less. But South Carolina, with that 13-year pause when they couldn't find the lethal injection drugs, they could have just not found the lethal injection drugs, but there was a push to create the firing squad by state lawmakers, and then there was a push to create a shield law that would keep the supplier of the lethal injection drug private. So that to me indicates that we still want the death penalty, at least the royal we, the people of South Carolina through their elected representatives, still want the death penalty here.
It certainly seems that way, at least in this state. Jeffrey Collins, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your insights with us. Capital punishment remains one of the most complex and controversial issues in American law, and your honestly sacrificial reporting gives us a rare look beyond the headlines. As South Carolina continues to grapple with execution methods and legal challenges, we will keep you informed right here on Connect to the Capitol.